Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a totally fascinating and absolutely crucial strategic topic: how organizations systematically navigate business uncertainty. We're going to be looking at exactly what our sources tell us about the external environment, specifically within the larger context of situation analysis.
Okay, let's dive into this. How do businesses survive the unpredictable? In highly volatile markets, agility and intelligence gathering are literally what separate the market leaders from the bankruptcies. Think of a business as a ship. It's not just about having a sturdy hull or a great crew. It's about building a highly sensitive radar to detect incoming storms. If a company fails to anticipate major structural changes in the economy or, say, sudden technological advancements, it risks becoming obsolete overnight. Poof, gone.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Foundations of situation analysis. 2. Internal versus external environments. 3. Forces of the external environment. 4. Active environmental scanning. And finally, 5. Real-world scanning success. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Foundations of Situation Analysis. So the sources are pretty clear on this. Organizations that actually engage in strategic management generally outperform those that don't. And the absolute bedrock of that management? That's situation analysis. This is where a company takes a hard look at both its internal environment and its external environment to find a strategic fit. Essentially, a successful strategy requires a perfect match between what a company is realistically capable of delivering and what a highly unpredictable outside world actually demands.
Moving on to Section 2, internal versus external environments. There is a massive fundamental contrast here, and it's super important to grasp. The internal environment is made up of factors that management actually has a degree of control over. Your organizational culture, corporate structure, your human resources. That's your ship and your crew. The external environment, on the other hand, is completely uncontrollable. We're talking macroeconomic volatility, sudden legal changes, wild technological shifts, and your competitors. Basically, the weather and the pirates. You absolutely cannot control them, but you have to navigate them if you want to survive.
And this brilliantly illustrates that dynamic. Notice the internal controllable elements grouped over on the right, things like organizational culture, human resources, and physical assets. But then, contrasting heavily with that, you have the external branches over on the left, capturing climate, economy, technology, political, legal, and competition. As a manager, you can fine-tune your internal structure all day long, but you literally cannot dictate the global economy.
Which brings us right to Section 3, forces of the external environment. Our sources explain that these outside forces operate on two totally distinct levels. First, we have the macro environment, which consists of broad societal forces affecting pretty much all firms across the board. Think of those like massive, distant weather patterns. And then we have the micro environment, which is all about industry-specific factors. Actually, scratch that. It's more like the immediate local ocean currents right around your ship. Macro is broad and systemic, micro is immediate and localized. To analyze that massive macro environment, strategists use the PESTLE framework. It's a great way to ground these really broad forces into concrete reality. You're looking at political regulations, economic conditions, sociocultural trends, technological advancements, ecological changes, and legal requirements. If a breakthrough tech disrupts your whole sector or a global economic crisis hits, boom, that is the PESTLE macro environment in action.
Now, zooming in a bit closer, we hit the microenvironment, which is also known as the task environment. These are the forces closest to the company's daily operations. We're talking your direct competitors, your suppliers, your customers, and your specific marketplaces. Our sources highlight that this area is heavily analyzed using tools like Porter's 5 forces to really figure out those immediate threats and opportunities. If a major supplier suddenly goes bankrupt, that's a prime example of a massive microenvironmental shock right there.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, active environmental scanning. So, how do we actually deal with all this?
Well, environmental scanning is defined as the monitoring, evaluating, and disseminating of information from both external and internal environments to key people in the organization. Basically, it's actively turning on that business radar we talked about. You are hunting for intelligence to spot opportunities and threats way before they actually hit the ship. Without this scanning mechanism, you are essentially navigating complex, dangerous markets totally blind. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the flow of intelligence starts super broad at the top with societal analysis, those economic, sociocultural, and technological factors we just broke down.
Then it funnels straight down through market analysis, competitor analysis, and supplier analysis. And look how everything points directly toward that central hub, the selection of strategic factors. By systematically scanning, you take all that massive chaos from the outside world and distill it into a highly focused, actionable list of opportunities and threats. But keep in mind, not all scanning is exactly the same. Our sources outline three main approaches. First, continuous scanning. This is absolutely the best method for today's crazy, turbulent business environment because it lets firms adapt rapidly. Then you have regular scanning, which is done on a set schedule. And finally, ad hoc scanning, which is more of a reactive, sudden assessment, usually kicked off because a completely unexpected crisis just blew up. Let's see this in action. Section 5, Real-World Scanning Success.
Let's take a look at the consumer goods giant Procter & Gamble as a totally prime example from our sources. P&G runs a highly structured, continuous scanning system. They have brand management teaming up with sales and market research to analyze specific categories. They literally write up detailed competitive activity reports every single quarter. Then those reports are summarized and funneled straight up the corporate ladder. P&G is constantly feeding real-time external intelligence directly to the decision makers. It's brilliant.
So, the crucial point is when an unprecedented external threat arrives, proactive scanning is exactly what saves you. Just look at Walmart in early 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic, which is basically the ultimate macro-environmental shock, hit. Walmart already had its radar pinging. They aggressively scanned the external environment, followed CDC guidance to a T, and proactively took massive steps to fortify their supply chain well before the entire system broke down. They fully anticipated a wild, unprecedented surge in demand.
And what was the payoff for that proactive scanning? A massive 460% growth. To put that into perspective, according to App Annie, by April 2020, Walmart's grocery app registered a staggering 460% growth in average daily downloads compared to just January of that exact same year. They saw the shock coming, adjusted operations instantly, and grabbed huge market share while competitors were still just trying to figure out what was happening. That is the tangible, real-world power of environmental scanning.
To bring the whole shebang together, the central takeaway from our sources is clear. A business simply cannot survive by exclusively looking inward. The modern market is just way too complex and volatile for that. Strategic management absolutely requires you to continuously monitor those uncontrollable external forces. Adapting based on external realities isn't just a nice-to-have best practice, it is the only way forward.
Which leaves us with one really vital question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Look at your own ventures, your own projects, or your own company. Is your business radar turned on? Are you continuously scanning the horizon, or are you just sort of hoping the market stays clear? Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep learning.